Hello, today we want to look at Acts chapter 5, verses 17 to 26. So what's happened up till now? Well, you remember in chapter 3 they healed a lame man, and then in chapter 4, that's Peter and John, and then in chapter 4 they were, had a little slap on the wrist about preaching in the name of Jesus, but, it was clear that this man had been lame and he was healed, and so they don't know what to do. They send him away and say, "Stop talking in this name." And then we hear a little bit about the life of the early church, how they held their possessions in common. Somebody had extra stuff, they sold it, and it was redistributed to those who had need. In the beginning of chapter 5, we heard about Ananias and Sapphira, who tried to get, a claim for doing that, but they were holding back some of the money, and they don't make it. And then we hear about the miracles that have been done. Even people are trying to get in the shadow of Peter to be healed. And then we get to Acts chapter 5, verse 17, the verses that we're doing today. Verse 17, "And having arisen, the high priest and all the ones with him, the sect being of the Sadducees." Okay, so it looks like this is, of course, a key passage when historians are trying to determine the relationship between the high priesthood and the Sadducees. I think the consensus is generally that most or many high priests were Sadducees, but maybe not all high priests were Sadducees. But I think we can, this is a very important verse historically. It does suggest that at this time, the leaders of the temple were primarily, and the priestly leaders were primarily Sadducees. I'm good with that as a conclusion. And verse 17 continued, they were filled with wrath, or with jealousy, or perhaps with zeal. They were really ticked at these people. And of course, they're in Solomon's portico daily, preaching, and people are seeing these miracles. So there's a jealousy. Wait a minute, I'm the leader here. I'm the one who has the position. What are these people without the position being so popular? I'm in office. You should listen to me. Don't listen to these other people. They're nobodies. They're uncouth. They're uneducated. And so the high priests lay their hands on them. Verse 18, "And having laid their hands upon the apostles," and they were laying their hands on the apostles, and they were putting them in the public jail, in the public keep, for holding, so that they could appear before them. Jailing wasn't a punishment. Jailing was a holding for judgment to be rendered afterwards. Okay, verse 19. "Now an angel of the Lord at night opened the doors of the prison, of the jail, and having led them out, the angel said," verse 20, "Go, and having stood, be speaking in the temple to the people all the words of this life." All the words of this life. Interesting. The angel calls, what is it that Peter and John have gotten themselves involved with? They're involved with this life. They're involved with a way of living. And of course, they're involved with a way of life, not just a way of this life, but a way of life eternal. And so the angel, as will happen also in chapter 12 to Peter alone, here it happens corporately. This angel is a very good lock picker, and the angel goes and releases them from prison. Verse 21, "And having heard this, they entered at at dawn into the temple, and they began to teach." They were teaching. Okay, so Sanhedrin thinks they're in charge. The people with the official position think they're in charge. But God's in charge, and the angel of the Lord's in charge. This is a little comical to me, especially when we get to the next paragraph. So we continue on in verse 21. And the high priest having arrived, okay, I've got my robes on. He's looked in the mirror. Man, I look good today. He's put it all. He's he brushed his teeth. He put on his deodorant. He's looking pretty spiffy there. ye old high priest. And the high priest, having arrived, and those with him, they called upon the Sanhedrin and all the council of the sons of Israel. So they're all, okay, when we're ready, we'll call you when we're good and ready. You wait out there in the jail until we call you. You know, everybody looks pretty, ready for the picture. Let's take a selfie. Everybody, you know, in the council there, the Gerizia, the gathering of the council of elders, the really important people, they're all waiting. And now, okay, now we're ready to talk to these nobodies. And they sent into the prison house for them to be led to them. Verse 22. And those servants arriving, having arrived at that prison house, they didn't find them. They did not find them in the prison. And having returned, they announced, verse 23, saying, quote, the prison house we found, okay, we found the prison house. We found it having been locked in all security. And we found the guards having stood at the doors. And having opened it, we found no one inside. Isn't this great? They thought they were the main show. Guess what? God really didn't care what they're doing. God's up to something else. Guards are even there. The guards are out front. They've been there. They've been faithful. Where are the people they've been watching? It's gone. Verse 24. And as they heard these words, both the captain of the temple and the high priest, they were perplexed. Imagine that. They were perplexed concerning them, what this might be. Very, very interesting Greek construction there. I'll talk about on the YouTube version of this, my YouTube version of this. Verse 25, and someone having arrived announced to them, quote, behold, the men whom you put in the jail, they are in the temple, having stood, and they are teaching the people. What? Verse 26, then, having gone away, the captain with the servants led them, not with force, for they were fearing the people, lest they should be stoned. This reminds me a little of the Haman situation in Esther. The people who think they're in charge and in control of the situation aren't in control of the situation. God is in control of the situation. And not only have Peter and John pretty much ignored the instructions of these so-called leaders, the ones that hold the official positions and the official offices, but they are, you know, it's like, didn't you hear us? We said not to teach in this name. And here they are right back where they were told not to be, still teaching, still preaching, still obeying the Lord. Well, I love this passage. It's kind of comical to me. I just love picturing the Gerizia, the Sanhedrin, the Sadducees, the high priests, sitting there thinking that they're in control of the situation in their time, and they have no idea what's really going on. They turn out to actually, in God's eyes, to be the insignificant ones in this story. Well, there you have the podcast for today. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, there's some interesting Greek here. Let's go back and look. Okay, this is an aorist participle, having stood, the high priest and all those with him. The ones being of the sect, this is the participle of ami, to be, the being sect ones of the Sadducees. They were filled, aorist passive, of zeal, with zeal. And they put their hands upon them. This is lobbying. It's an aorist. Just trust me. Baal is the aorist of Balo. And they put them, there's tithemi, in the keep, that is the public keep. And the angel of the Lord at night, at night, opened. This is a noigo, the aorist of a noigo. C is the key to hidden sigma. They opened the doors of the prison, and having led them out, this is the aorist of ekphero, aping an aorist, he said, capital letter indicates direct discourse, a quote, go, and having caused them to stand, and having stood, aorist passive participle, be speaking, present imperative, in the temple to the people, all the words of this life. And having heard them, they entered, aorist participle, aorist indicative, under the sunrise at dawn, in other words. They were teaching, probably an inceptive imperfect. They began to teach in the temple. Another aorist participle, again, is aorist. The high priest and all those with him, they called, sigma alpha, it's aorist, the Sanhedrin and all the elders, the Geruzia of the sons of Israel, and they sent into the prison house for them to be led. This is an infinitive. It's an aorist passive infinitive of ago. 22. We've seen this several times. The servants the servants who had arrived, they did not find them. This is the aorist of heurisco. It loses its sco in the aorist in the jail. Having returned, sees the key to hidden sigma, sigma alpha, aorist participle. This is also an aorist. Double lambdas go to one lambda in the aorist. Liquid verbs don't do sigmas, so there's no sigma, but it is aorist, internal lengthening. Verse 23, saying, quote, this is another direct discourse. With direct discourse, a lot of times the hoti is not translated. We found, having been closed, perfect passive participle. It has the reduplication on the front. The ending is shoved right on the stem, perfect passive. In all security and the guards having stood, this is the perfect participle of histemi, at the doors, and having opened, inside no one we found. Aorist participle here. Okay, now this is an optative. I don't know that we've seen an optative yet in the book of Acts, but this is a what would become this, what this would become, what this could become. The optative, if the indicative is the mood of fact and the subjunctive is the mood of probability, then the optative is the mood of possibility. And so this is a I guess you'd call it a potential optative. What's going to happen here? What would this be? It expresses real wonder and perplexity. I mean, this is the word for they were perplexed, the imperfect of dia phoreo, I think it is. This is an interrogative pronoun. What? And there's the little bomb, the conditional particle that's untranslated. What could this be? Great grammar. Okay. Indefinite pronoun when it doesn't have the accent. They announced to them, quote, behold, another direct quote, direct discourse with the capital letter, the men whom, relative pronoun, you put, tithemi, in the jail, they are in the temple having stood, another perfect passive or perfect participle of histemi, and teaching the people, then having gone away, aorist participle, the captain with the servants led them, this is the aorist of Pharaoh, irregular, not with force, for they were fearing the people, lest they should be stoned. This is a purpose clause, negative purpose clause, in order that not they be stoned, which means if it's a purpose clause, probably this is going to be subjunctive, and it is. Aorist passive subjunctive. Well, some interesting Greek there in our verses today. We'll, Lord willing, see you tomorrow.